Guys, I want to welcome you to another episode of the Advisory Board podcast, where we bring in experts from the business and franchising community to give you actionable insights that can improve the profitability and the processes you're following in your franchise today. I've got with me an interesting guest. You may or may not know Tommy already, Tommy Yionoulis. He's the co-founder of OpsAnalytica, which is a growing platform. It's a tech SaaS solution that helps franchises identify where they have profitability issues in real time so they can fix them. Pretty cool technology. It was designed with years of consulting background that Tommy had, and also years of working in franchising. He started in 08, I think, wasn't that when you started? In a rough year to start in franchising, especially with Quiznos. But that was kind of where he cut his teeth, and he's been in franchising ever since. So, Tommy, I'd like to welcome you, and also tell everyone we're going to talk about the three profit killers that every franchise is struggling with today. But before we jump into that topic, will you just tell everyone a little bit more about yourself and about? Oh, did I mention that he was a stand-up comedian, open for Larry the Cable Guy? I don't think I brought that up yet. So anyway, tell us more about you. Tell us about OpsAnalytica, and we'll jump right in.
Sure. So I started working in restaurants at 14, right? I was a hotel restaurant guy from day one. The hospitality business was like just in my soul. Both my grandfathers are immigrants to this country, Greek and Puerto Rican. So I used to joke that I was born in a dish pit, and, but in reality, that was part of it. And my parents wanted nothing to do with those businesses because they had seen their parents deal with them. So I did that. I really wanted to be a chef. I have a hotel restaurant degree from the University of Denver. That's what got me off the East Coast out west. And I was just working in that industry. 95, I graduated from undergrad, took a job managing a country club back in Virginia. A month and a half into that, I'm talking to one of my best friends, and she's like, dude, we're talking, I'm getting my butt kicked, first job out of college. That's when you realize, as you all know, that you don't know anything. Like, you have this degree, but you know nothing about what you actually have a degree in. And I said to her, I should just be a stand-up comic. That'd be way more fun. And she's like, you should, because you don't want to be a 40-year-old guy with a wife and kids living in the suburbs. Now I'm 52. And just regret that when you were 23, you didn't try that. And I was like, you know what? You're right. So literally I found an open mic. I went down. They said, come back in 2 weeks. I did stand up for the first time. I was like, holy hell, this is amazing. And I loved it. And so for the next decade, really, I just did stand-up comedy. And I ended up out of here in Denver. I worked at the Comedy Works, which is one of the best clubs in the country. And I opened for all the guys that like Larry the Cable Guy, Dave Chappelle, Brian Regan, what's that guy's name? Jim Gaffigan. I opened for all those dudes. I did comedy for a decade, drive all over the country. I would drive from Denver to Tucson for $200 and sleep on a couch. Like, I did the whole thing. And then like 05, it's like 10 years in, and I'm like, man, I need a couch and health insurance. Like, this sucks. Like, I got to get some money because I was broke. I never got famous. You know what I mean? And so I went back and got an MBA because I thought, I believed all the MBA marketing. I said, well, if I have an MBA, no one will care what I did for the last decade. Wrong. And so I got the MBA, met my wife, got married, got the degree, ended up at Quiznos in 08. Then the first job I had, check this out, Quiznos implosion happening, all these stores closing. I was the franchise assistance guy for the first 8 or 10 months I worked there. Then we reorged. I went up to ops services. And it was when I was working in sort of that ops services operations role that I ended up inventing the platform that I now sell today, because I was running their audit program. And so we went looking for an audit program so we could digitize the audits and report off of them. And then essentially I built something, which I had no coding experience, but my parents were both in tech. So I just kind of said, I'm going to do it. And I just figured it out. And it was a low code, like the survey. It was like a Google Forms of that time, which there was no Google Forms. So I built like an online form, those 2008 smartphones, did that. Buddy of mine left a company and was like, hey, you really like that tech stuff. Would you like to go learn workflow? I said, sure. So I left Quiznos because I saw that ship was sinking. And I did that. We ended up buying that company on an earn out, which is a great way to acquire a business. If you don't have tons of capital, you can earn out and just work there and buy the owner out. We did that for 5 years. Halfway through that business, we needed a training project for some kid. I said, rebuild that thing I built at Quiznos. We built that. We threw it on LinkedIn. Someone wanted to buy it. And I was like, oh man, maybe there's a market for this. And so 2 years later, that company actually coming to an end because of SaaS and a transition of the software. And we were like, well, let's just go rebuild that and just do this one SaaS product. And hence we had OpsAnalytica, which was kind of a marrying of the restaurant audits that I had built at Quiznos, and then all of that experience building like large enterprise workflow and data analytics products, software workflows for, our clients were like the World Bank, Visa, Wells Fargo, Comcast, United Healthcare. So we built huge workflows for those kind of companies. So we had that kind of nice mix of the restaurant and whatnot. Now, I will say our platform was started for restaurants, but it works in any franchise vertical because there's nothing about it that makes it restaurant specific. It was just that we spoke restaurant really well. So when we started off, we really focused on franchise restaurants.
I love it. Well, and that's the beauty of this, and it's dynamic. I mean, I live in the same world. A lot of people are like, oh, you do frandev. I'm like, well, yeah, and like all these other things, because you can use the platform to kind of shape it to your needs. So because you got so much background, and I love this. So guys, if you're looking for that kind of a tool, you're looking for some sort of an operations excellence management tool, audit tool. Just reach out to Tommy on LinkedIn. He's there all the time. You'll see him. So take a look at OpsAnalytica and fill out the form there if you want to know more. But today we're gonna this isn't gonna be a podcast about OpsAnalytica. We're just gonna steal all of his brain power and dump it into this topic. Tommy, why don't you tell us just a little bit about you and I before we talked about the three main profit killers in every franchise: about labor, about materials, food costs if you're a restaurant, food costs, but materials, and then also about speed of service. Do you mind maybe jumping in? Let's start at the top. Let's talk about what have you seen? Where do you see labor creating such an issue for franchisees when it comes, or franchise operators when it comes to profitability?
Well, sure. And let me point out real quick. So like, I wish I had invented the profit killing sort of aspect of our platform. I didn't. What I realized is that I did an assessment last summer, really, where I was looking at how our clients were using our platform, right? Which is something you should do as a SaaS owner. And I was going, most of our people come in because they want to handle those sort of daily operational checklists that they need to run every day because consistency of operations is huge, right? And so that's why people were buying the platform. But I looked at our top 4 clients and I said, well, when we set them up, we probably set them up with like 50 to 60 checklists of really handling that daily operational consistency stuff. But then I realized those guys have built over 400 of their own processes. So I started digging in on those other processes. And what I realized is that they were using the platform to manage these profit killers, right? And so what a profit killer is the way we define it is it's a managerial driven process, right? That a manager is supposed to do. And when they don't do it, it ends up costing the business real dollars, not fake dollars, real dollars. Your costs go up because your manager missed doing that activity, right? And where we saw a lot of them was around labor. And I'll give you 2 quick examples.
Please.
We have a 100-unit Pizza Hut franchisee. And we looked at they have 1-2 question process. So simple. Go check your real-time labor right now. And if it was high, then what that process did was it flagged it to the manager, hey, your labor's high. And then it also flagged it to the district manager. And so what they wanted to do with that, and they ran it 4 times a day. It took like a minute, 2 minutes each time to do it. But what it did was it made the manager follow the process of checking labor at key times a day when labor percentage can run high. And when they did that, the managers would then go, oh, shoot, I should take some action. And they might send somebody home, or they might say, hey, don't come in now, come in at 5 versus 4. And so they could manage their labor in real time. And that ended up saving them about 3 to 4% labor cost per month by simply actively managing the labor process. That on a Pizza Hut is about 12K a year, 12 to 13K a year in savings. And if you have 100 stores, that's $1.2 million a year. And that's one of the things I think is really interesting, Dave, is because what you end up seeing in these businesses, when you have large multi-location chain, when you have a lot of locations, even a $10 here or $15 there. If you times that by 100, that's $1,500. That's real money. Like when you have a lot of locations and you can make even small incremental little savings, but you can do it across every single location, every single shift, this starts to add up to be massive amounts of cash. I mean, those guys are saving $1.2 million a year. We have a sandwich chain. They changed one question on one checklist to add a little bit more accountability about making sure people punched out, and they saved $300K a year. That's $300K that you can use to hire more people, train more people, do more marketing, open another store. You know what I mean? Like that becomes real money quick, and it happens throughout your business. And the issue is, it's not a training issue. See, that's the thing. The franchise world focuses so much on training. And I get it. Training is important, but training without behavior change, which is what we bring to the table, is just half the coin. Right? You need to have the actual behavior change, and you need to put systems around things that you need to put systems and accountability around the items in your business that are costing you money. And the problem has always been that's really easy to do in an automated system. That's easy to do in your inventory system or your supply chain. But when you have human activity, did this manager at the right time do that task correctly? That's been the hardest thing in the world to put systems around. And that's where our platform steps in. So it can be on anything. It can be on labor. Like I gave you 2 labor examples. Let's talk speed of service, right?
Please.
So like we were just talking about in our pre-conversation, you've got to deliver. Let's say you have a guy, he's going out to fix an air conditioning, or he's going out to do a repair in a home. If that guy doesn't stock the truck right before, which is the job they're supposed to do, but let's say he's lazy that day and doesn't want to do it, or forgets, or whatever, or he ends up on site and then he doesn't have the right part. Now that person has to leave the location, drive to Home Depot, get the part, come back. That was 45 minutes that you paid that guy that you're not generating any profit off of. And now that job took longer, and that might cascade back to the last job of the day. That fourth appointment that's from 4 to 6 might now be from 5 to 7. Now you're paying somebody overtime. You know what I mean? Now the customer's mad because they've got a repair person in their house during dinner time when they wanted the guy out of the house back. So all of these things cascade into your sales and your profitability. And once again, it's just about hold the person accountable to do their job, put a system around it that just says, and the system doesn't have to be arduous. It could be one question. Did you check that you had that? Did you check the labor? Did you thaw the burger patties at the end of the night? So the next day's lunch, the burgers are cooking at the right time, and we're not creating this giant line of people at the door or at the drive-through because everything's taking twice as long to cook.
Right.
That's what we're talking about. Real, and these are small incremental things. It's not like you build one checklist that handles all of them. You just nail them. One question here, 2 questions there. Just drop the accountability and the data.
Yeah, and Tommy, I love what you're saying. There are a couple of things that I think we've got to shine a spotlight on 2 elements here. The first one is the difference between the training and the accountability, and I see it all the time. And as a guy who helps run a company, I think we struggle with that sometimes too. I think everybody does, but where there's a gap, and I see the same thing a lot, is, hey, here's our process, go do it. And that's it. And there's no one who's making sure. It's a franchise, right? It's a system. The system should be yielding on any given day. A normal person in a normal market with normal acumen should be getting abnormal results in a good way, right? That's the heart of franchising. But if that normal person in the normal market is not following the abnormally good processes, they're not going to get abnormally good results. And so that's where I feel like what you're describing is kind of the missing piece. And it's so simple. And if you think about your processes as a franchise system, you should have little checkpoints at key milestones that are impacting profitability the most: labor, materials, and speed. The second thought is, you mentioned this before we started recording, but that was a great example, like a home service brand. But if we put the spotlight back on speed of service when it comes to food, and you mentioned this, but I do this all the time. If I am like running late, or I have to drive I almost never leave the house during the day because we're so busy and I'm in meetings. But I'm going to our executive meeting today, and I've got like a half an hour gap between meetings and that. And I'm going to drive by a couple of restaurants. If the Wendy's is full, the line is full, then I will not go there, right? And the lines are full
Yeah,
sometimes because the service speed of service is so low because they're not following the abnormally good processes because there's nothing to hold them accountable to that, right?
absolutely. And I would suggest, absolutely. And it's like, and these are all controllables. We live in a world today, we live in an insane world. We've got governments messing with us. Everybody's messing with these businesses, just like, taxes, minimum wages, the supply chain, gas is high, all the food costs is so much higher. All these things are going on. You can't control any of that. You can only control what's happening within your four walls. And in this world where we see locations closing, people going out of business at an accelerated rate, you have to manage within your four walls. You have to be impeccable. You have to be at a highest level humanly possible within your business, controlling all of these things just to even survive today. And anybody who's not doing it, that's why they're closing right now. That's why they're going out of business, because they're not systems driven people. And I want to go back to the training, right? Because all of these businesses that have been invented, most of these franchise systems, especially restaurants, but I think it translates to all of them. Back in the day, when a lot of these companies were founded, there was no mobile technology.
Oh,
There
yeah.
was no way to hold people accountable to doing things and see that they were doing them in real time, right? And that's what we bring to the table. Yeah, they
That's
had
what it
paper and
was
a
checklists. They had checklists back in the day, like
pen,
paper checklists, if they had that at all, right?
or they had like a thing taped to the wall.
Yeah.
And everybody ignores that stuff. And so what happens is, and so they didn't have a way to do it. So the only way they could control what they could control was through training. And that's why you see such a massive push in all these systems about train, 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 train. But the reality is that people can do training and get 100% on a test and not change their behavior one bit. And that's why and it becomes, I call it the training conundrum, where they train all these people up. Everybody got an A on the test, but they don't see the behavior change within the business that they were looking for.
Mhm.
So instead of going, hey, we have to actually hold people accountable to making these behavior changes, is what you do through a digital checklist. You change the questions to change the behavior. But if you don't do that and you don't hold people accountable, the behavior doesn't change. So then the training people go, man, everybody got 100, but we don't see the results we wanted. Well, we should do more training,
Yeah.
right? And we'll
No,
also see that a
no.
lot of times. Yeah, we'll see that a lot of times too, where people will keep adding more and more checklists, so that finally the guy's job is doing 7,000 checklists. It's like the government too. They keep adding laws, but they don't enforce the laws, right? So they just add more laws, but they don't enforce them. If you just actually held people accountable to the original checklist, but you actually made them do it, and then you saw where they said they were doing something, they were pencil whipping it, but then you actually add a little bit more accountability to that, which is what the sandwich chain did. They went from a true false question to a take a picture to show everybody's punched out question, which you can't fake because you have to go punch everyone out to show a picture of nobody being punched in. Then all of a sudden you start to see the results that you're looking for. And
Right.
so you don't want to be, I mean, you can be big brother if you want. You don't necessarily want to be big brother, but what you do want to do is just hold people accountable on the really important things that are costing you money,
Yeah.
right? And you'd be amazed. Like we said, 100 restaurants, 2 questions, 4 times a day. So let's say they said 8 minutes a day doing that, but they saved $1.2 million as an organization. I mean, who doesn't want that ROI, right? By the way, here's the other point. You're already paying these people to do this. This isn't a new thing that you're asking them to do. They
No.
already know they're supposed to do it. They're just not doing it
Mhm.
for any number of reasons, right?
Right. Well, it's funny you bring that up. This gap that people have. I came from like the ed tech training industry, but I think of it like this: that when is the time that you need to remember to go pick up the butter at the store? Is it when you're lying down to go to sleep at night, or is it when you're in the car and you're going to be driving by the store? or when you're in the store.
Yeah.
And the challenge that we have, I think, in this industry, in every industry for training efficacy is we're pulling people out of the environment and we're training them in a classroom. They're taking a quiz 1,000 miles away from where they're supposed to be doing the job. And then 3 days later, they're doing the job. And guess what? The connection,
Yeah.
connection doesn't carry over, but putting something in their hand that happens while they're on the job that's reminding them to do the little minutia. I don't think it's because people are bad or lazy either. I think it's because they're like, oh crap, he just broke a piece of equipment. Susan's sick today, and they're just like scrambling with minutia. But if you give them a focal point, like something like this, and guys, it can be as simple as a text response. There can be a tool like OpsAnalytica, but like the process we're trying to lock in today is you have to have process reinforcement and system integrity that creates accountability that can't be skipped. And it also makes management easier because now KPIs. Hey, did you do your four check-ins for labor today? Yes, no. Like that's an easy accountability process to manage your in-store managers or your field support managers if it's a home service brand. Did you ask for a referral at the end of the service delivery?
Yeah. I'm going to plug something that's not either of ours. It's Atul Gawande, Atul Gawande, Kwand, the Checklist Manifesto. You can get it on Audible. It's like a 6-hour listen. You can get it really cheap on Amazon. It's called the Checklist Manifesto. He's a Harvard surgeon, but he breaks down the history of checklists, and he does it in a multiple of industries, starting with Army test pilots in the 1920s, all the way through surgery, restaurants, you name it. But what he'll tell you, and it's such a good book, is that the reason people are missing things today is because it's not because of the fact that they're lazy or they're stupid. It's because of the amount of details that people have to manage today, and the human brain cannot keep up with all of the details. And I will tell you, part of that problem is the amount of apps that everybody's using within their business, because now they're managing all of these different apps. Like I wrote a blog one time comparing a modern day restaurant to Mel's Diner. Remember that show Alice in the 70s? And it was Mel, and and it was Alice, and it was the Dingbat, and it was Flo, and they had a diner. It was a sitcom, right? But that restaurant was, you wrote something down on a piece of paper, you walked over, you put it on a wheel, he made the food, and then they had a cash register. A modern restaurant has a POS system. It has printers, KDS screens. You have all your different delivery services. You have an inventory app. You have an alcohol app. You have an OpsAnalytica app. They might have your app in there for local store marketing. They have 500 new things they have to manage, right? But application app, like it's not a stack of applications anymore. You got to go manage that. Customer service emails are coming in. There's so many more details. And it's really easy to miss some of those details if you don't put systems around it. And in addition to that, like you mentioned it, that you might have a clear brain if you're well rested. Oh, we all have cell phones. We're all getting texts all day, social media. But then you take all that, but now you got a guy who's tired. You got something that broke. Someone didn't show up for work. And all of a sudden, all of the things that you need to do start to fly out the window, or you get stressed. Once you get stressed, you can't remember things as well. And that's when you miss stuff. So having a system in place, like people look at checklists as like Big Brother and they don't like doing them. But yet at the end of the day, they're not there to be that way. They're there as like a warm, cuddly blanket and a cup of tea. They're there to help you remember all the little things that you're supposed to do. And most of the checklists that you see are all things that the company has identified as things that cost us customer satisfaction, sales, and profits.
Yep. 100%.
So it's like you just want them, you just want to use them.
Well, and that's why these three profit killers are so interrelated, right? Because if you're talking about labor costs, well, you'd mentioned it before. I can't remember if that was off. It was before we started recording. But if I've got someone who's going slow, then it's but they're going slow because of something to do with the food or the material costs or something that's not in place. Then it's going to reduce the speed of service, right? But it's also going to increase my labor cost as a ratio of my revenue. That's the real issue, right? Like if I'm going slow, I'm getting 12 burgers done instead of 18 burgers done per 15-minute increment. And that means I can't serve as many customers, which means the lines get longer. Someone walks in the door and then walks right out because they don't have time. Like I'm losing revenue because of my speed of service, but it's also it's a compounding effect of my labor cost ratio to revenue goes up, and anyway, you get the idea.
And I use the burger patty example. That's what I was referring, right? Like
Yeah.
burger patties, right? If you like use like a quarter-pound burger patty, it's like a half-inch thick. If you forget the night before to pull burgers out of the freezer and throw them in the walk-in so they thaw, then your cook time on a frozen burger versus your cook time on a thawed burger could be 2 minutes longer. So then your ticket times all increase by 2 minutes per burger, right?
Yeah.
And so all of a sudden, instead of getting people out the door in 30 minutes, they're coming out at, let's say, 40 minutes, which means you're not turning your tables as quickly, or your drive-throughs getting longer because people were waiting longer at the food window to get their food. Then all of a sudden, like you said, you're going to be driving by a bunch of restaurants on your way to your next meeting. You're going to look in what might have been a 7-car line, which in your mind you would have said, okay, mentally I can make that happen. Now that line's all the way out the parking lot. So then you just drive by that business. So that customer didn't come to your business and you lost 15, 20 bucks because that person didn't come, all because of something that you could have controlled, your employees were supposed to do. They didn't do it because there was no system accountability measure around it. And now you're losing money. And how many cars are driving by your business that day because you didn't do it? And like we talked about, when you have a lot of locations and you do a lot of like things, that stuff adds up so fast. If every customer is worth 15 bucks to you per order on average, and you lose 7 of those, what is that? 70 plus 30, 100 bucks.
Yeah.
100 bucks.
Yeah, you're
so
right.
You're like, okay.
It's the same thing in like field service, right? And you mentioned the HVAC guy. Hey, I didn't do the task. And this is really when it comes down to like task management, like what needs to be done daily. Because not putting the part in the truck means he just spent an hour and a half going to and from the store, and ticks off customer A who's it's taking long to get his service done. But then customer E, who was supposed to be done at 4, has to get pushed to the next day. That revenue just got dropped or got moved. Or somebody now has to reschedule, and guess what? Maybe they don't get them rescheduled, and they're mad because you didn't show up, so they just go book the guy across the street from them, and they pay him more because they're ticked at you for not showing up. Like there's a real serious impact on the recurring services like cleans, like window cleans, home cleaning. This is a huge deal.
Yeah,
huge deal, because if you can get one more clean per team done per day, and we work a lot in this industry, then that can equate to the equivalent of like $3,000, $4,000 a month of revenue that you can book that you couldn't otherwise book because you'd have to have more crews to get it done. And so it's a matter of managing efficiency in the team. And sometimes that's a matter of stocking the vehicle before you leave, doing the proper checklist with the customer. Some people aren't getting the proper online reputation or the referral business they need because no one's asking. And there's no process you tell them to ask, but there's no process to make sure they verify I did ask before I left. What's measured gets improved. And that's ultimately, I think, what we're leaning toward here.
And I want to point out one more thing for the home services thing, and I think it's a nice mix between what we both do, is also when you're done the service, like, so did you check the 20 things that you needed to check for before you left the building so you could make sure that you got all your equipment back? I can't tell you how many times I'm at the house and I'm in the basement and all of a sudden I see a wrench or a really like a multi-tool or something that somebody left on top of a piece of my equipment, or did they clean up nicely before they left? Did they get everything back in the truck? Did they check all the things? Did you confirm that the AC was actually working before you left? So you're also not driving back out the next day for free. Right? You're not wasting time, gas, and money to go pick up a tool or to go back out to confirm something that worked because you could have checked it when you were there, but you were trying to get home, whatever. You left a light or a flashlight. Like those, there's just so many little details, but they cascade into money for the owner of the company. And that's one thing that we realized too with these profit killers is that the only person who cares about your profits is the owner of the business or the guy who gets massively compensated on profitability. You cannot expect an employee who doesn't actually really get a sizable chunk of the profitability to care about it. And that's another reason to put a system in place, because they simply don't care, because it doesn't affect their paycheck. And if you're not holding them accountable to it, like we literally had, and I'm not going to name the company, but we were working with a restaurant chain, and they are big and they are infamous. And we went in and we put in our platform, and what they saw when they started testing was how bad they were doing, like how bad their stores were operating, and it kind of knocked the wind out of them, and it kind of it made them sad and embarrassed. And then this was the guy, the senior VP of ops. You can't find a guy higher in this very large billion-dollar company who's more in charge of ops than this guy, and he nixed the deal. He said, no, we're not doing it, because he was like, I'm going to get myself, like, I'm going to expose to everybody that we're not doing a great job. But yet, if he had implemented it, we see people getting a 5% increase in sales. It's about the equivalent of getting a higher Yelp star for just doing the processes every day. That generally equates to essentially raising your Yelp score by 1 star. It's about a 5 to 6% increase in sales from just, making sure you got straws and lids and ice and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But what ends up happening was that guy's so high up. So you would think, like, in your mind, you'd go, he would really care about profitability and increasing sales and doing a good job. No, he covered his own butt. So this is really going back to the owners of these businesses. Don't expect that you have a VP of ops or you've got a district manager that they care about profitability the same way you do. You've got to take the lead and set the culture of your business and hold your people. You need to bring it down to your VP of ops. This is what we're doing. We're going to have a culture of systems and accountability, and we are going to focus on profit killing, and you're going to do it because I'm holding you accountable. Don't leave it up to those guys, because if it doesn't really affect their paycheck, then they just look at it as, well, that's just more work and more exposure to me. So just understand that part of it. The owners have to lead on this. The CEOs have to lead on this, because those are the guys, CFOs, they're measured on profitability. They've got to be the ones that drive this into the business.
Yeah, I hear you 100%. And I think, to be fair to the line workers and line managers, I think it's mostly ignorance, right? Like they don't really know. Like they know, hey, I've got 100 things I got to get done today. I'm going to get them all done. And so I don't want to add one more thing to my list because I'm already buried. I'm going to spend an extra hour after I have to clock out to wrap up some stuff, right? Like they don't really they don't understand the impact of profitability at scale. They just don't. And then there are the people that are just like, I don't give a crap. I'm flipping burgers. Screw the man. There's a lot of that, really too, at that level. So if you don't take charge of it, like you're saying, if you don't take proactive steps to put tools in their hands that take care of it for them, and I'm wearing my favorite team's hat, but I was in a training session with one of the head trainers. I was a high school baseball coach, and he showed up, and he was like, "This is how we trained all these kids that were in they had this project in Africa where the Dodgers put in camps, and they took these kids that were not even getting educated. They put them in school, and then they helped them learn how to play baseball, because they're incredibly athletic there, because they grew up throwing spears to get their food, right? So they had kids that hadn't played baseball but at age 16, and they were getting D1 scholarships as pitchers because they were throwing 97. And we were like, no way. There's no way you did that in 2 years. We've been doing this for 10 years. We can't get that out of these kids. And he said, the key is when you're training people to improve, you can't do it with them knowing that you're training them to improve. And we're like, what? And then he explained, he's like, look, you want somebody to swing a bat better? You don't say, this is exactly how you're going to swing the bat, blah, 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 blah. You give them a task that does that for them. Right. So he's like, put them on an angle, like have them stand on a pitcher's man in reverse and pitch at them if they're dropping their shoulder, and they'll start swinging straight, and they don't know they're working on it. Yeah. And I think that's where these checklists, whatever tools you put into place, especially with your line workers, your daily ops guys, if you can create it in a way so it's either gamified or it's not an obvious thing that you're making them do to improve a certain metric because that they don't care about, then they'll just do it. They'll just do it, and they won't even realize that they're improving the process as they do it.
And going back to like the home worker scenario, right? If you had a checklist, right, that was part of generating a report that you as a leave behind, or that you could email to somebody and go, hey, just wanted to let you know this is everything I did. And then you could take pride in it. Look, I cleaned up the area. Here's a photo. Oh, and then, but in the same process, it's like, hey, did you grab all your tools, or did you do this, or did you do that? If you can do something like that, it's exactly the same thing. Hey, this is how we're increasing our customer satisfaction by leaving this leave behind. You can take pride in showing how good of a job you did and all the things you checked, and you frame it in that thing. Then it's not like this arduous thing you have to do. It's how you get that. I don't know if you get tips, but it's how you let the customer know this is why you do business with us, because we're more professional. I'm a professional. I deserve respect. This is all the things I checked for you. You can turn it into a pride thing as well, too,
Oh yeah. Well, the quick loop plates just started doing that. Here's our 37-point check or whatever. And sometimes
Yeah.
I'd look at my car after, I'm like, I don't think you topped off my windshield wiper fluid, but I don't care. My tires are all riding even. Good job. Thanks, guys. But it does make it seem like you're getting a lot more value, and they might have done it anyway. So I love that
Yep.
idea. And one last thought is the impact of doing these sorts of things, putting these processes in place. You're delivering a consistency of service. It also increases the number of 5-star reviews you're going to get, right? You will stand out from everybody else because it's a consistent, deliverable 5-star reviews, social proof. It drives revenue. It's connected to SEO. And it's also how, like, was it 95% of people, they will look you up on like Google Maps and look at your star rating before they ever go, especially restaurants or service businesses. It's the only way I make my decisions. If you're not a 4 or 5 or better, I'll usually call you. I won't even show up. So it's critical, right? That you manage that as well.
And what I would suggest too is like, just think about like the businesses that you patronize the most, right? Across the board of all the businesses you patronize, but every town's got that great Italian restaurant, right? And it's like you go in there any night of the week and it's always packed, it's always well staffed, the food's always delicious. And you go, well, why do we keep going back? It's because it's consistently great. People like, consistency is boring. And so people struggle with it. Everyone's looking for this magic wand. They're looking for this marketing campaign that's going to somehow magically change their business, because they don't want to do the boring work of being consistently great. But it's blocking and tackling, right? It's hitting 300%. It's everything that people like reward. Every championship team, every business that's killing it, it's always about consistent execution. We in and out. Like, what do they say about baseball? You're going to win 60 games, you're going to lose 60 games, or whatever it is. And then there's that middle 60 games where you gotta, or whatever that number is, that really determine if you're going to be a champion or not. But it's, you gotta win those 60 games before you can win those 80 games. It's consistency. And you've got to train your brain to love consistency, to take pleasure in keeping something consistent. Like, that's one of the biggest keys, I think, to running any of these businesses.
Yeah.
Is how do we consistently execute at a high level every day?
And if that's not how you're wired, right, and you're the owner, then you need to hire that person. You need to find that person and hire that person, because you might be the visionary. It's like, hey, I'm going to go out and get the new business, do the biz dev, whatever it is. But if you don't have that person that's going to consistently drive and deliver excellence and be excited about this kind of stuff, you need to go find them, because they're out there. They're everywhere. They're organizing closets somewhere, and you need them to run your business.
Absolutely. I want to tag on to that. And I know I'm a talker, so you need to cut me off because I'll keep going.
Let's as you wrap up, let's make this your wrap up thought. Tommy, I've got one more thing and then we should probably wrap. But please, end on this note.
Sure. So I got into sailing when I turned 50, right? And so last Christmas we rented a catamaran in the British Virgin Islands, and I was captaining. I was the captain. We drove around. It was awesome. But I went through the entire life cycle of what my clients go through with checklists, because I had built a checklist for the boat and I had built it. And so the first day I ran my checklist and I checked my engines and everything. And then I did exactly what everybody does. The next day I forgot to run. I don't need to run the checklist. I got this. I'm smart. I won't miss anything. I didn't run the checklist. We started sailing and the stupid swim ladder was down. I'm dragging the swim ladder, And like I missed a couple of little things. And then I stopped at the next stop. And then I realized, okay, dude, you got to run the checklist every time. And then the checklist became this thing that I did. And I switched my mindset on it, because if I had ripped that swim ladder off, it would have cost me thousands of bucks. And we wouldn't have been able to jump off the boat and go swimming. So it would have been a total pain in the butt, right? But like the whole point is, I went through the entire life cycle of the checklist. I used it the first day. I didn't use it because I thought I was smarter than it. Then it taught me. Then my own actions taught me I wasn't smarter than it. And then I started using it. And it was actually this really nice tool, because every time I would do the checklist, I would look at it. Oh, shoot, I forgot to do that. Oh, shoot, I forgot to do that. That's what we're talking about. If you can eliminate those, oh, shoot, I forgot to do that things, your profits are going to go up. Your sales are going to go up. Your speed of service is going to go up. Your 5-star reviews are going to go up, and your business is going to get better. And that's the moral of the story.
Yeah. And we will wrap on that. That was a great wrap up and summary. Tommy, if somebody wants to get in touch with you, what is the best way for them to connect with you?
Definitely LinkedIn. He'll put my name in there so you can find me on LinkedIn. My last name is hard to spell. It's Yionoulis, but I'm the only one out there, Tommy Yionoulis. Or you can go to OpsAnalytica.com. OpsAnalytica.com, and we have chat. But please come, just ping me and ask me a question about this. Not gonna, I'm not the sales guy. I'm just going to sit there and answer your question and help you figure out your problem. I love learning about problems people are trying to solve in other verticals. We're in automotive, we're in vets, we're in dental offices, we're in restaurants, but I want to talk to people in other businesses, because that's like, I'm the creative type. So I want to learn from you guys and what you're dealing with.
Yeah. Tommy, I hope you guys can pick up on the energy here, not just a funny guy, but also somebody who's like passionate about fixing these issues. And Tommy, I want to thank you for dumping so much knowledge on the team. The people that are listening in, you rock, and we'll have to do it again sometime. Thanks again.
Appreciate it, man. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.